Today we're going to cover the OVW 4. It was the graduating class of 2002 for WWE's developmental system, or WWF, which had just turned into WWE after the dispute with the World Wildlife Fund in 2002. Nobody could have anticipated how big this graduating class would have become, but it was 4 young guns getting ready to take their step up to the big stage. You had Randy Orton, Leviathan, who would become known as Batista throughout his career in the WWE, the Prototype, aka John Cena, and the next big thing, who was part of the Minnesota Stretching Crew, along with another member of the graduating class for this year in Shelton Benjamin, and the next big thing, Brock Lesnar. But we're not going to cover the entire run of the OVW 4 throughout their WWE career because, as you know, with all the world championships and accolades, we'd be sitting here for probably 24 hours straight. However, we are going to cover their rookie or inaugural year in the WWE, 2002. So let's get it started. How good was the rookie year for the OVW 4? We're going to start it off with Randy Orton, the son of the legend Cowboy Bob Orton. Everybody knows who he is, the man who would become a multiple-time WWE champion, the man who would hold multiple accolades and become the legend killer. Didn't really do too much in 2002, if I'm going to be honest. He had some decent matches, one against a guy who we're going to talk about later in Brock Lesnar on the SmackDown brand. He actually competed against The Undertaker for the WWE Undisputed Championship in May of 2002 on an episode of SmackDown, and although he didn't win, I feel like the fact he got a crack at the World Championship so early in his career shows just how high Vince McMahon and the powers that be were on Orton as he would become a young star. And they had every right to be, just because, the guy would become the youngest world champion at SummerSlam in 2004. But yeah, when it comes to his first year in the WWE, like I said, he started a feud with Hardcore Holly, and that was his first main feud. He had a match with Tommy Dreamer at WrestleMania 18 Access back when it was still the WWF. But it was really kind of a slow build for Orton, but we knew he was athletic. Beautiful drop kicks, cross bodies off the top rope. Having matches with the likes of The Undertaker for the title, having matches against the guy we're going to talk about later in Brock Lesnar. But, all of his momentum would kind of be halted. He would be moved over to Monday Night Raw in September of 2002, and while he was moved over there, he had a shoulder injury. He suffered a shoulder injury, and that kind of slowed him down until the start of 2003 when he would return from injury. He did a bunch of RNNs, which was the Randy News Network, obviously a play on CNN, and those vignettes would kind of build up the hype for Orton to come back to the WWE, and he would start off as like a blue-collar athletic babyface, and throughout the vignettes he would kind of become this narcissistic bullshit style of heel, which would kind of be the birthing before the birthing of the legend killer character, which we would see full-fledged throughout 2003, 2004, and 2005, and then obviously Orton would switch between heel and face later in his career in like 2010, 2011, etc., etc. But for the most part, this Orton in 2002 was just an athletic kid, and those vignettes I think really showed how much variety that Orton would have for the years to come in the early start of the Ruthless Aggression era. But yeah, 2002, Orton had some decent moments, but that injury really stalled his momentum, and those vignettes kind of saved his career, I feel like, in hindsight. Up next, we're going to talk about Leviathan, aka Dave Batista. He would start off his main roster career from OVW on the May 14th episode of SmackDown, where he would be an enforcer for Brother Devon. It would be Deacon Batista alongside Reverend Devon, and that was basically the remainder of his career on SmackDown for 2002. He would be the tag team partner of Devon. They would compete in multiple tag team matches against the guy we just talked about in Randy Orton, as he would try to beat Batista with multiple partners, and it just never would work out in his favor. But throughout the partnership with Devon, he would become more and more agitated the longer that the partnership would go on. And then on the November 14th episode of SmackDown, Devon would be defeated by Batista, and that would kick off the start of Batista's singles run. And after that, he would move over to the Raw brand, just like Orton started on SmackDown early and then was moved over to Monday Night Raw. Batista would do the same thing, and he would actually compete against Kane at Armageddon 2002, and this would kickstart a relationship or a partnership, so to speak, with the Nature Boy Ric Flair, which would lead to the development of Evolution as a faction on the Raw brand, including Triple H, Randy Orton, who would become the Legend Killer Randy Orton, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and Batista. But 2002 wasn't much of anything for Batista's career, aside from the partnership with Devon, which would lead him to become a singles star on Monday Night Raw. We're 3/4 of the way through the field, and this time we're at the kid from West Newbury, Massachusetts, and John Cena, aka the Prototype, as he was known in UPW and Ohio Valley Wrestling, and basically that was his character that he moved to the main roster with. He would show up on the main roster on a June 27th episode of SmackDown emanating from Chicago, Illinois. On this episode, he would go up against the multiple-time world champion in Kurt Angle, the Olympic gold medalist. Kurt Angle would ask him one simple question: what is the one quality that you possess that makes you feel like you can come in here and hang with the best in the business? And he gave the answer of ruthless aggression. Can't do it exactly the same, but that's pretty good, huh? Maybe I'll include a clip if I don't get copyrighted. We'll see. But he would show up and face Kurt Angle in his WWE debut, obviously sporting the red and black gear, the generic gear, but Cena's gear throughout this entire 2002 run until he started to go off into the rapping heel character was basically like a Prototype creator wrestler in a WWE video game, but the colors of the gear that he would sport each week and on pay-per-views as well would represent famous sports teams from whatever city they were performing in. Like in his debut, he was in Chicago, Illinois. He wore red and black for the Chicago Bulls, and it would go on, green and white for the Celtics, purple and yellow for the Lakers, and on and on and on. Even though he would come up in defeat against the Olympic gold medalist after a traditional amateur wrestling style of pin, John Cena would earn the respect of his peers for his WWE debut backstage. But the most important person he earned respect from was a man who was big on respect, and a man who didn't respect everybody but had everybody's respect at the same time, in Big Evil, the WWE Undisputed Champion, the American Badass, The Undertaker. This would lead into Cena teaming with The Undertaker for I think 1 or 2 tag team matches, but Cena and The Undertaker wouldn't work together until 2003, when Cena would become a full-fledged heel. His first main roster feud was against the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla, Chris Jericho. Cena would then go on to face Jericho in his first pay-per-view singles match at Vengeance on July 21st, 2002, and to many people's surprise, the rookie from West Newbury, Massachusetts would actually get it done with an unorthodox style of roll-up, catching Jericho off guard and getting the 1-2-3. This was an astronomical level victory for John Cena, especially in his pay-per-view debut. And for Jericho to put over a guy like Cena, I feel like it shows how highly regarded Cena was in the eyes of the people backstage. And I know that it's said that Cena was almost fired before he did the rapping gimmick, which we'll get to later on in the Cena segment of this video. But yeah, he would beat Jericho here. Jericho would get some wins back on him, and then he would move to try to win the inaugural SmackDown Tag Team Championships in a tournament where his partner would actually be Billy Kidman. Kidman and Cena would be eliminated in the first round, and the partnership wouldn't last very long, with Cena turning on Kidman, and that would lead into a short feud between the two where they would trade singles victories back and forth, and I believe Cena would actually get the last laugh, getting a roll-up pin by putting his feet on the ropes to defeat Kidman, and this would lead into Rebellion 2002 in a tag team match on October 26th with the teams of John Cena and Dawn Marie versus Tori Wilson and Billy Kidman. This would be the continuation of the storyline between Dawn Marie and Tori Wilson alongside Al Wilson, and obviously the coming to the light of the HLA, and we'll leave it at that. Billy Kidman would hit the shooting star press on John Cena and get the 1-2-3 for his team alongside Tori Wilson. And then after the match, it would lead to a little brief makeout session between Billy Kidman and Tori Wilson. But after the pay-per-view, Cena and Kidman would part their ways, and it would kind of move Cena into the limbo stage of his career. That was until the Halloween edition of SmackDown that year, where John Cena would dress as Vanilla Ice and complete a rap backstage during the WWE Superstars Halloween party, but he was rapping to none other than Stephanie McMahon, and this would kick off the heel turn for John Cena and turning him into the Doctor of Thugonomics slowly but surely. However, if I can backtrack real quick before we wrap up the Cena segment, John Cena would actually compete against Brock Lesnar, who is going to be the last person we talk about out of the OVW 4. He would compete against Brock Lesnar on the October 17th episode of SmackDown, and even though Cena would lose, and come up short against the next big thing, Cena and Lesnar would have a huge feud towards the beginning of 2003, and obviously they would have multiple matches throughout their career, so it's kind of interesting to go back and look at this. and see how far all of these people have come in their career. But going back on track to wrap things up with the Doctor of Thugonomics, Stephanie McMahon would actually hear John Cena freestyling in the back of a bus during a world tour, and that would kind of spark the interest of, can you do this on television? And it's something that Cena had always wanted to do, so he kind of ran with it, and that's why we saw the segment on the Halloween edition of SmackDown that year. And this would lead into a partnership with Bull Buchanan, or B Squared as he was called, and turn Cena into the Doctor of Thugonomics. It wouldn't start out like that, but early on in 2003, at the tail end of 02, B Squared and Cena would move Cena into the Doctor of Thugonomics segment of his career in 03 and have him become a full-fledged heel. And as we already talked about, man, this rapper gimmick really saved John Cena's career. He was basically just a generic create a superstar mid-carder, and Vince McMahon and the powers that be didn't see anything in him. But after that world tour freestyle in the back of the bus, he really was able to get things moving. And the B Squared partnership at the end of 02, leading into November and December, is what started Cena in one of the biggest parts of his career before he would become a mid-card champion and then a world champion at WrestleMania 21. And now we get to the final pillar of the OVW4 in the next big thing, the former NCAA champion in Brock Lesnar. Lesnar would make his WWE debut on the March 18th, 2002 episode of Monday Night Raw, where he would interfere in the Hardcore Championship Triple Threat match and attack Al Snow, Maven, and Spike Dudley. He would also be accompanied by his mouthpiece and really the person who elevated Brock Lesnar's career so early on, in the man who birthed Extreme Championship Wrestling, Paul E. Heyman. The first real feud of Lesnar's career would take place against the Hardy Boys and Matt and Jeff Hardy, competing against Jeff Hardy on the April 21st Backlash pay-per-view, where he would actually defeat Hardy by KO. He would powerbomb him over and over and over until the ref had to stop it due to Hardy being unconscious. And this was actually Lesnar's debut match. It was his first official televised match, and it took place at a pay-per-view, which showed that he was the next big thing, at least in my opinion. And then on May 19th, no, not you, Kane, he would team up with Paul Heyman to take on the Hardys and actually defeat them in a tag team match. And this was the first pay-per-view after the WWF changed to the WWE with the whole Get the F Out campaign, which I believe we touched on earlier due to the lawsuit with the World Wildlife Fund. And then we would move to June's King of the Ring pay-per-view, where Brock Lesnar would continue his unbelievable rookie year by becoming the 2002 King of the Ring winner, thus earning himself a shot at the undisputed WWE Championship at August SummerSlam pay-per-view. Lesnar would defeat Test and then Rob Van Dam in the finals to win the tournament. He was originally supposed to take on Stone Cold Steve Austin, but before this pay-per-view is when Austin would really get fed up with the WWE creatively and walk away from the company for a long time. However, nonetheless, the next big thing was on to bigger and better things, as he would take on The Rock at SummerSlam for the WWE Undisputed Championship. And just as a message to the Undisputed Champion in The Rock for SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar would briefly feud with Hollywood Hulk Hogan and actually drain the life out of Hollywood on SmackDown, where he would put him in a bear hug and make him bleed internally from the mouth, even grabbing the blood of Hulk Hogan and smearing it across his pectoral as a sort of sign of war paint, so to speak. And this would carry us into SummerSlam 2002, where Brock Lesnar would try to become the youngest world champion in WWE history, and he did just that by countering the Rock Bottom into the F5 and getting the 1-2-3 to become the new WWE Undisputed Champion alongside his mouthpiece and advocate, even though he wasn't called that at the time, in Paul E. Heyman. So in just one short year, Brock Lesnar had won the King of the Ring tournament, competed in his first televised match on a pay-per-view, and now won the Undisputed Championship in just shy of 6 months. And Lesnar would actually become the second fastest superstar to win the world title since their debut. The first person was Ric Flair, who would win the title in just 113 days, while Brock Lesnar would win in 126 days. So just over 4 months it took Lesnar to debut, win the King of the Ring, and win the World Championship by defeating The Rock. Following winning the world title, he would immediately enter in a feud with another huge superstar and legend of the WWE in Big Evil, the American Badass, The Undertaker. He would defend his title against The Undertaker at September 22nd's Unforgiven pay-per-view. However, the match would end inconclusively as The Undertaker would grab Brock Lesnar and throw him through the Unforgiven stage, leading to the match ending in a no contest. But the two would continue the feud at October's No Mercy pay-per-view and conclude it inside the ominous structure known as the Hell in a Cell. Leading into the pay-per-view, Lesnar would break the right hand of The Undertaker in a backstage assault with a fire extinguisher, causing Taker to come into this match as a wounded participant. This would give Brock Lesnar the unfair advantage, but it would also aid Undertaker in causing serious damage and busting open the next big thing due to the cast on Undertaker's right hand acting as an unforeseen foreign object and an assistant to Undertaker's damage to try to regain the WWE Undisputed Championship. This match was back and forth. It was brutal for both men to the point where Undertaker actually got the cast ripped off by Brock Lesnar, but it would end when Lesnar would land an F5 in the middle of the ring and get the 1-2-3 to retain the Undisputed Championship. I feel like this was a litmus test for Brock Lesnar to see how big of a main event star he could be in the years to come, and he passed with flying colors for his first successful world title defense. And this would lead us into the end of the 2002 run for the Beast, and unfortunately the end of his world title run as well. Going into Survivor Series this year, he would defend the title against The Big Show. However, before the pay-per-view, Big Show would injure the ribs of Lesnar by throwing him off the stage. Lesnar came into this match as a wounded animal, just like Taker came into the Hell in a Cell as a wounded animal. And unfortunately for Brock, it wasn't even the fact that The Big Show was the better man and able to beat him. Brock Lesnar had Big Show beat with an F5 in the middle of the ring, and the ref counted 1, 2 until the unthinkable happened. The advocate and the mouthpiece for Brock Lesnar, his main man throughout his WWE run up to this point, had turned on him. Paul Heyman would align himself with the Big Show, costing Brock Lesnar the world title, after Big Show assaulted Brock Lesnar with a steel chair and then landed the chokeslam in the middle of the ring to get the pinfall victory and become the new WWE Undisputed Champion. Unfortunately for Lesnar, the rematch against Big Show wouldn't be in the cards, and he would never get a rematch against Big Show for the Undisputed Championship that he lost. This would mark the first pinfall loss of Brock Lesnar's career up until this point, and then he would move on to the Royal Rumble 2003, where he would win the Royal Rumble and then head into WrestleMania 19 to face Kurt Angle for the Undisputed Championship. And that's going to wrap up my video for the first year of the OVW4 in the WWE. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I feel like although the OVW4 has been covered, I'm not exactly sure that anybody's ever covered their first year, which was 2002, and I just really enjoyed making the video from start to finish. If I have to rank who had the best to worst year in terms of overall performance and accomplishments, I think number one has to go to Brock Lesnar without a doubt for the best. The runner-up would be John Cena because he accomplished a lot during that year. Then we would have to give it to Randy Orton due to his injury, but he did have some cool moments and even challenged for the Undisputed Championship at that point in the year. And then the last and final member would be Batista, aka Leviathan, because his real push and momentum wouldn't start until the tail end of 2002 into 2003 in the formation of Evolution, which was basically the same for Orton, but I feel like Orton accomplished a little bit more than Batista did. So in ranking of worst to best in terms of the 2002 year, or I'm sorry, from best to worst in terms of the 2002 year, I would have to give it to Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Randy Orton, and Batista. But I really enjoyed making this video. Be sure to hit an F5 on the like button and then hit the protoplex on the subscribe button. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Have a good night, everybody, all right?